What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to take a look at Joe Lunardi's way too early bracketology for 2026, coming out yesterday on May 20th. It's only May. Unfortunately, we're still a long ways away from the college basketball season, so we're not going to be filling them out just quite yet. We're going to wait another month or two at least before we fill out a way too early Joe Lunardi bracketology, as that is the best series we usually do here on the channel. I cannot wait to get started on them. Cannot wait for the college basketball season to begin. But we will take a look at his bracketology and discuss it. You guys got a good idea about where I'm at with some of these teams based on my preseason top 25. We'll have a couple more of those updated top 25s or Daniology power rankings, whatever you want to call them, throughout the offseason as well. But let's just see what we agree with Joe Lunardi's bracketology, what we disagree with, who we think should be in, who we think he has in, but we don't really think are going to have that good of a season, and just see what he has at this point. There has been some changes recently. We're going to have a transfer portal update video coming out soon because players are starting to withdraw from the NBA draft, decide they are going to return to school, and they are committing to their new teams. So we will have a transfer portal update coming out soon and a few other stuff coming out as well. So be on the lookout for that, guys. More NBA mock drafts, more transfer portal updates. We'll have an updated top 25 at some point, and I got a few different ideas to keep us busy that I think are going to be pretty fun videos over the off season. We will get through the college basketball offseason together, guys, so make sure you guys subscribe. But let's go over this bracketology here by Joe Lunardi. Way too early. We're here late in May. Still, like I said, sadly far ways away from the college basketball season, but he does have a top overall seed, the Houston Cougars. I think a lot of people have them as their preseason number one team. They were the runner-ups last season, returning quite a bit of players other than Juwan Roberts and LJ Cryer, which are two massive players that they had on that team. They're returning a lot of guys: Emmanuel Sharp, Milos Uzan, Joe Tugler. That is going to be a very good team, and we know under Coach Sampson they are going to be relentless on defense, and bringing in Pop Isaacs, that is going to be a shooting spark. And hopefully, I assume they're going to try to mold him into that LJ Cryer type of role. So that would be perfect fit there for Houston. They're definitely going to be at least the top 5 team again next season. So I have no problem with them being top overall seed projected at this point. First team out is Texas A&M. They did lose their coach Buzz Williams. He is now the head coach of Maryland because Kevin Willard went to Villanova. The coaching carousel is moving and has been moving this offseason. But Texas A&M ended up with Bucky Ball. Bucky, the former head coach of Samford, is now the Texas A&M head coach. I think it was a pretty good hire. He's a young guy. He has a very high-powered offense. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do there. They got a pretty decent pickup in Mackenzie Mbako. I'm not sure how they're going to do in year one there in College Station. I honestly don't know if Texas A&M is going to make the tournament, but first team out, I guess, yeah, he has them not making the tournament. So I would probably agree. They might be close, but I do expect the SEC to be pretty competitive once again next year. I'm not sure the Aggies are going to be one of those teams, so we will see. The last team in, he does have SMU. I think SMU definitely has a good chance of making it this year. I think that they are going to be competing with Clemson and maybe in North Carolina as one of those teams from the ACC. It's possible 2 out of those 3 teams get in. I think SMU, we don't know really their schedules yet, so they're going to need to play a better non-conference schedule. Need to be playing a better non-conference schedule than they did last year. They're going to be more consistent. It's definitely possible that they could get in. Are they going to be the new Wake Forest, where Wake Forest over the past so many years seemed like they're just on the outside every single year? Even this past year, Wake Forest wasn't too far off. So SMU could be falling into that, but I don't mind them as the last team in. Next up, on the bubble, last 4 byes, we got Creighton, Georgia, Maryland, and Miami. and last 4 in: Ole Miss, NC State, Marquette, and SMU. So let's go over those 8 teams first. Creighton, I think, is definitely going to be a tournament team next year. I think for them to be last 4 byes, I think they're going to be better than that. I think that they'll be around maybe an 8 or 9 seed again this next season like they were last year, if not even higher. I mean, I have trust in Creighton, and it's interesting because I took a glance at his bracketology before I started recording. We'll talk about how he has the Big East and why it's a little bit confusing, in my opinion. But he does have Creighton as the last 4 bye. Georgia. Georgia, they're losing Silas DeMary. Mike White is starting to really get this team together. I think he's got some guys coming in. It wouldn't surprise me if they do get in. I would definitely have them in at this point. You know, it's way too early to try to make these close calls. I'd have them in definitely over Texas A&M at this point. If you're picking and choosing out of the SEC, I would agree with Joe on that part. Maryland, year 1 under Buzz Williams. Buzz Williams, very good. Maryland's coming off of a very good season. They are losing a lot. They are losing their entire Crab 5 that they had as the starting 5 of that Maryland team. But Buzz Williams has brought over some guys with him from Texas A&M. He brought in some guys from the portal. Wouldn't surprise me if Maryland was able to get back into the tournament this year, so I don't mind that there. Miami. Miami is a big wild card this year in the ACC, and could, you know, they have a chance to be very competitive in that league. I mean, outside of Duke and Louisville, I really do think there is another spot or two out of the ACC open there for a team like Miami to come up and grab, because they spent a lot of money in the transfer portal this offseason picking up some guys. So we'll see how they all mesh together. Those big spenders like that, where you just kind of bring in a bunch of guys, they can be very hit or miss teams. So Miami's definitely very interesting. I don't mind them being a bubble team here, because they definitely could be, you know, possibly a 7 to 10 seed, or, you know, miss the tournament completely and be in the bottom half of the ACC. So it's going to be pretty interesting with Miami. I don't mind them here, though. Ole Miss, you know, I know they are losing some dudes, specifically Sean Padula. They're coming off of a Sweet 16. Chris Beard, you know, building that program. He had the chance to leave them for Texas A&M, which honestly, for like basketball wise, that's kind of a lateral move, so I don't blame Chris Beard for staying. I think, you know, I would like to see more coaches stay rather than just go chase the bigger job. So I definitely do like that. And Chris Beard, you know, maybe the first time that he has stayed instead of chasing the bigger job. But Ole Miss, I think they're building something there. I would have them more comfortably in, but I'm glad they're in. NC State, right now, I like where they're at on here, last 4 in. If they get the guy they're rumored to get, which is PJ Haggerty, the transfer from Memphis, I think that you have to have them more comfortably in, and I think they definitely become, in my opinion, the clear 3rd best team in the ACC. If they can get PJ Haggerty. But I think Will Wade will make the tournament year 1 with the Wolfpack. That is my prediction there. Next up, Marquette. I think Marquette is being very slept on. That goes back to the Big East, man. Marquette and Creighton, I feel like, are being very slept on. Yes, they are going to lose Cam Jones. They got some other dudes there, and Shaka Smart is a great head coach. They are going to be one of the top teams in the Big East once again, and I think they're being very slept on here by Joe Lunardi. I think that they deserve to be higher, more comfortably in the tournament. But it is way too early. I know it's hard to tell, but this is just my opinions right now. SMU. Kind of gave my thoughts on SMU already. I don't mind them being here. I think if they do get in, they will be on the bubble, just because I don't know if they're going to have the strength of schedule. Playing probably a weak non-con and then playing in the ACC. They're going to have to win their big games. Maybe try to get one against Duke. Try to get one against Louisville. They beat NC State, the Miamis, the Clemsons. Try to get those quad ones when you can. SMU's really going to have to be very good in their quad one opportunities, because they're just not going to have very many of them. And then first 4 out, you got Texas A&M. Don't mind that. Nebraska. I want to see Nebraska make the tournament again. The only Power 5 team, man, that has not won a NCAA tournament game. So we're cheering for Nebraska ball. Indiana, love to see them out because I'm a big Darren DeVries hater right now, at least for year one while he's at Indiana. I don't want to see him do good because he did leave my team in West Virginia. Washington, interesting there on the first 4 out. Love to see them do good again. Next 4 out, Clemson, Villanova, Virginia, Notre Dame. Interesting group of teams here. But, yeah, I'm fine with all of them being out. I do think Clemson getting a pickup of Nick Davidson was a big pickup for them. I think it was honestly a perfect fit. The losing Shefflin, who's actually moving over to Clemson football. Kind of interesting there, played tight end because he had eligibility for football but not basketball, which was kind of weird. And losing Chase Hunter, of course. It's just big losses. But I expect Clemson to be decent. It wouldn't surprise me if they do make the tournament, though. So let's go ahead and move on to the main bracket that he's got here because that's really what I want to look at. And let's go over the 1 seeds first. So we got Houston as our top overall seed, Purdue as a 1 seed. No complaints there. As if you guys seen my top 25 video, I had Houston number 1, I had Purdue number 2 for the preseason. I think they're both going to be very good teams. Other 2 1 seeds in our other regions are going to be UConn and Duke, which I think is pretty interesting. You know, UConn is building a very good team there. I don't hate that at all. On UConn here at as a 1 seed at all. I think that they're building something really good over there in stores. Kind of had a down year, but still took Florida down to the wire in the second round. And that was pretty impressive. They went on to win the national championship. And UConn built on their team. I think Solo Ball is already had a breakout season last year. I think he's going to be a college basketball star next year, especially lined up with Silas Damari in the backcourt. That is going to be a very, very fun team to watch. I don't mind UConn as a 1 seed here at all. I think they're definitely going to be a top 4 seed. You know, I feel pretty comfortable saying that at this point. And we've seen them win as a 4 seed just a few years ago. So I think that I feel comfortable saying that, but I don't mind them here as a 1 seed at all. And then Duke, you guys know how I feel about Duke. Yes, they are losing a lot, but I think in John Shire's offense, I think he is a very underrated coach for how young he is and what he's been doing with that team. Yes, they did have a stacked team. It was a very young team, but he has a very good offense and a very good system. Such good plays, man, and he has the players to execute it. They're bringing back some good shooters, and I'm very excited for this Duke team. They're bringing in more freshmen. I think that they are going to be rolling once again, and I don't mind them here as a 1 seed at all. I think they're going to be a 1 or 2 next season once again, so don't be surprised if they are. Now, preseason, I feel like most people are going to have them around the 10 to 15 range, you know, in the polls. I think they're going to climb up pretty fast, though, for sure. Next up, our 2 seeds. Let's check them out. We got Kentucky. No surprise there. Arizona, interesting. They're a team that is going to be bringing in a lot of freshmen, some really good freshmen, 5 stars. And I don't know if I see Arizona as a 2 seed. It's definitely possible. It's going to be a different Arizona team than we've seen the last few years. Then we got St. John's as a 2 seed. And Michigan as a 2 seed. So the one I don't really like is Michigan as a 2 seed. And I kind of been overhyping them a lot too. They had a really good transfer portal. I think Elliot Cadeau is going to be in for a breakout season. I think North Carolina is going to be very sorry that they let him go because I think he is going to thrive for Michigan. My only question here is Yaxel Lindenberg going to actually play for Michigan, or is he going to stay in the NBA draft? That is the big question. But either way, I would have... Let's take a look at these 3 seeds. And Boogie Flan did just commit to Florida, the defending national champions. But I would have Florida over Michigan as a 2 seed. I would honestly have Iowa State over Michigan as a 2 seed. And at this point, I would have BYU, maybe even Tennessee, honestly. I mean, Tennessee... I feel like 3 is right for them, but the other 3, BYU, Iowa State, Florida, I would all have above Michigan at this point. And let's take a look at our 4 seeds. Ohio State, pretty cool to see them up there. They are going to return, I believe, John Mobley Jr., who was a awesome freshman for them last year. He could be a superstar in college basketball this year. Arkansas, I don't mind them there as a 4. Michigan State and UCLA, which, a lot of people are high on those teams. I think Michigan State always has a chance to be really good. UCLA, it's possible. They got, some good recruits coming in. They brought in Donovan Dent. So we'll see what they are able to do. Maybe a 4 seed is a little high, honestly. I think there's some other Big Ten teams I would have above them, because right now, they have Michigan above them and Purdue. Is UCLA going to be the 3rd best Big Ten team? Maybe. I don't know. I would have Illinois. As probably my 3rd best Big Ten team, and he's got him up here as a 5, so not too much further lower there. But back to the 3 seeds, because I didn't really get to go over them, but Florida did pick up Boogie Fland. I think that was a big pickup for them to play point guard. Between him, the transfer from Princeton they got, they're going to be returning all their bigs. That's going to be a stacked team once again. So I think definitely a top 3 seed. You can't get lower than 3 if you're Florida. Iowa State, they're returning a lot. Really, they're only losing Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert, but returning Taman Lipsey, Josh Jefferson. I was trying to think of his name. They got some hoopers, guys, and I really do think that Iowa State is going to be very good and competitive in the Big 12 once again. But there are 2 teams, my top 2 teams that I do think in the Big 12 next year are going to be Houston and BYU. And BYU is just so stacked, especially if they are able to pull off Darian Williams, who is probably the top transfer still available at this point, from Texas Tech. He did just withdraw from the NBA draft, I think today or yesterday. So BYU, if they are able to get him, even if they're not, I think they're going to be a top team in the country next year. One of the best offenses, funnest offenses to watch. That pickup of Rob Wright is perfect. They need a playmaking point guard right there. And returning Richie Saunders, bringing in AJ Dibansa. That is going to be such a stacked team. And I'm really excited to see what BYU can do next year. It's going to be a very fun team to watch. But next up, we do, I guess, I did forget to mention Michigan State here as another Big Ten team. I think I would have Illinois above UCLA and Michigan State. I think Illinois brought in the right transfers. I think they're going to be a team that works very well together. I think Andrej Stojakovic is one of the more underrated transfer pickups. And Kylan Boswell is a very underrated point guard who's going to be able to control the game. I'm excited for this Illinois team, guys. I think Brad Underwood has the right team. I think they're a sleeper to win the Big Ten. I think Purdue's the runaway favorite for sure. But it wouldn't surprise me if Illinois is the 2nd best team in the Big Ten this year. I could have them above Michigan as well. Then, next up we have our 5 seeds. Yes, USC, that's a little high. Eric Musselman, another Big Ten team here. This is going to be his 2nd year at USC. He was starting to get it together towards the tail end of last season. In Big Ten play, they won some decently big games, and they got some transfer pickups as well. He's got some decent transfer pickups as well. They are going to lose Desmond Claude to the transfer portal as well. He is yet to make a decision. It was looking like it was going to be Florida, but they kind of lost interest in each other, and then Florida went out and got Boogie Fland. So we'll see what happens there, but I think 5 seed is way too high at this point to project for USC. Let me know what you guys think. I think that it's way too soon to say USC is going to be top 5 seed in March Madness next year, but that's Joe's opinion. I think a little bit too high on there, but I think Eric Musselman could get this USC team for sure in the tournament. I would like to see him at an 8 or a 9, even a 10 seed. Somewhere in that range. No higher than a 7, though. And I think 5, that's a little bit pushing it there. Our other 5 seeds, we do have North Carolina, which is interesting. I'm not so sure North Carolina's going to be all that great next year. I mean, and above Louisville is kind of absurd. So I was kind of feeling Joe Lunardi here for a little bit. I was feeling good about this Bracketology by Joe Lunardi through the early stages. I think my biggest question mark was really Arizona and Michigan as the twos. I felt was a little bit high. I would have teams like BYU, Iowa State, and Florida above probably both of those teams. But other than that, I was feeling pretty good about it until now. Until these 5 seeds where you got USC and you got North Carolina as 5 seeds, which is honestly feeling like, I know a lot of preseason is about the brands and about the brand bias. You expect these big brands to do good, especially when they spend a lot of money in the offseason. But, Louisville is a good brand, and have them as a 6 seed when they seem to, on paper, have a much better roster and had a better season last year, something to build on, more so than North Carolina and USC, is kind of crazy to have Louisville down at a 6. I completely disagree. I think Louisville at this point has to be at least a 4, I would say. And North Carolina, USC, I'd have North Carolina at 8 or a 9 as well, just like USC. I'd have a lot of teams over both of them. And then we just got Auburn as our other 5 seed. I actually think Auburn at a 5 seed with their current roster, with what they're losing, is actually a perfect spot for him, because they're going to be good again under Bruce Pearl. They are losing a lot. They're losing Janai Broome. They're losing Chad Baker-Mazar. I mean, their whole team was basically seniors, except for Todd Pettiford. And Todd Pettiford's going to be probably in the NBA draft. So that's their whole team there from last year. So they're not really returning anyone. But they do have some good pickups like Keyshawn Hall. They're going to bring in some guys. They're going to be good once again. I think a 5 seed's pretty good for Auburn at this point. Now, 6 seeds, you got Wisconsin, Louisville. I already shared my thoughts on Louisville. I think they're too low. They're too low. There's no doubt about it. Gonzaga and Texas Tech. I'd have Texas Tech above both those 5 seeds, USC and North Carolina. Probably Gonzaga too. I feel like a 6 seed's pretty good for Gonzaga, but I'd have them as a 5 over those other 2 teams. And then you got 6-seeded Wisconsin. I feel like that's pretty good for Wisconsin there. I think they're going to be pretty good. Our 7 seeds, Kansas. I feel like that's fine for Kansas. Honestly, I wouldn't mind Kansas being a little bit higher. If you wanted to put a big brand at 5, I would rather Kansas than North Carolina, just because I think Bill Self's definitely just more proven. As a coach, for sure, he's won 2 national championships, and with Flory Badunga coming back, he showed a lot of potential, and honestly could have been one of the better freshmen in the country if he was able to start over Hunter Dickinson, but because that spot was kind of taken up, he's really going to flourish this year. He's going to be fantastic, and bringing in some other big-time freshmen. Kansas is a sleeper. They could be more around that 4 or 5 range, definitely, for sure. But I think 7's fine for them for now. But I think maybe just a tad too low. And then Oklahoma, sure, they brought in Nigel Pack. Interesting pickup. Miami was terrible last year, but Nigel Pack's still a very good player. You got Missouri as a 7. They're going to have mostly new team. Cincinnati, I'm done with the Cincinnati expectations. Since they could not get it done last year, I don't expect anything from Cincinnati this year. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they missed the tournament again. Wes Miller, he's on thin ice, man. He's definitely on thin ice there. He's going to get fired if they don't get a seed like a 7 seed and make the tournament next year. If they miss the tournament, I think Wes Miller is out of there. I'm surprised he didn't get canned this year, but yeah, Cincinnati too high. I wouldn't surprise me if they missed the tournament. Our 8-9 seeds, we got Vandy versus Baylor. That's cool. Baylor's going to have a completely new team. Iowa and Texas. Yeah, I could see it for sure. You got Ben McCollum there, first-year head coach from Drake. Going to be, he's such a good defensive coach. And I'm super excited for Iowa. That is a fantastic hire for them. And then you got Texas there, who picked up Sean Miller as a head coach, another first-year head coach. That would be a very fun matchup there. Other 8-9 matchups, Alabama, which is one that really stuck out to me when I first saw this. And I mentioned Creighton being maybe a little bit too low earlier. I didn't realize they were a 9 seed because it has them as one of the last 4 byes. So I figured that they were going to be probably a 10 or an 11, but I guess a 9 is fine. I would still have them a little bit higher. But Alabama's too low. Alabama's too low. Nate Oates is one of those, like I mentioned with John Shire about just that system. Alabama's system is going to be a top 5 seed every year. Even in a rebuilding year, I can't see them being lower than a 6 seed just because Nate Oates' offense is always going to be that good. They're always going to win some games, and they're going to win some big games. They're going to have a good enough resume to get a 5 or a 6 seed, even in a rebuilding year, which this might be for them. And honestly, I feel more confident. This is going to cause, some chaos in the comment section, especially coming from Auburn fans. But Auburn sitting here as a 5 seed, I feel more comfortable about Alabama's system and Nate Oates as an offensive coach getting a rebuilding Alabama team to a 5 seed than I do Auburn and Bruce Pearl getting a rebuilding Auburn team to a 5 seed. So if you flip-flop them, I think it would make more sense, but I think that they both should probably be top 6 seeds at least. Maybe Alabama as a 5, Auburn as a 6. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on that big rivalry and where you think they're going to be next year. Because, a lot of these top-tier SEC teams are going to be rebuilding this year and maybe have maybe just a slight down year. Last 8-9 matchup, we got Mississippi State and Oregon. Feel pretty good about those teams. I like where they're at 8-9. I could see them both being higher for sure than that, but honestly, I can't see them either one of them not making the tournament next year. I think they're both going to be tournament teams, so I like to see them in here. Good to see. 10 seeds. Who do we got? We got Georgia. We'll see if Mike White's able to get them there again. Definitely possible. I think he's a very good coach. I think the SEC is going to be a little bit more open this year for a team like Georgia to try to climb a little bit from where they were last year. So I don't mind that at all for sure. Maryland here, we've kind of talked about these teams already from the last 4 and the last 4 byes. Yeah, Miami, NC State, Marquette. Let's go ahead and I'm going to tell you about what I think about the Big East here and why it's a little bit confusing for me and why they're low on Creighton and Marquette is because there are only 4 Big East teams in this entire bracketology. One of them's a 1 seed. One of them is a 2 seed, and that's UConn and St. John's. And the other 2 are last 4 ins. I mean, Marquette and Creighton. So, if are you high on the Big East or are you not? For this to happen, St. John's and UConn are just going to have to roll through the Big East and really just beat everybody else. And then, and it's possible for sure. And they might have better non-con schedules than Creighton and Marquette. I just think Creighton and Marquette's going to be better. They're going to be competing with UConn and St. John's. There are going to be upsets in the Big East. There always are. And I think that they're just a little bit too low on them. And it wouldn't surprise me if a 5th Big East team snuck in as well. So I'd like to see that. But other than that, we got our 11 seeds. We got Memphis. We got Ole Miss and SMU, who we kind of talked about. We got San Diego State, VCU, which would be good to see. They lost their coach. Coach Rhodes went over to Virginia. San Diego State, I would expect them to be back in the tournament this year once again, build upon what they they were kind of in a rebuilding state last year. They are returning Magoon Gwath. He was going to enter the transfer portal, he did enter the transfer portal, but he did return to San Diego State, so I'm really happy about that for them. He's going to be a massive rim protector, defender for them, a guy who can stretch the floor. He has a ton of NBA potential as well, so I'm excited for them. I think that they are going to be probably top of the Mountain West once again this upcoming year. And other than that, the mid majors we can go over for fun, but it's impossible to predict who's going to win these leagues at this point. Liberty, Yale both made the tournament last year as 12 seeds, so maybe they're able to do it again. High Point, Charleston, these teams are well coached. They're regularly making tournaments. Furman, South Dakota State, same thing. South Dakota State usually always competitive in their league over there in the Summit. You got Siena. I'd love to see the Siena Saints make it to the tournament. That's awesome. Youngstown State Penguins as well. South Carolina State, Long Island, Southeast Missouri State again. SEMO made their first tournament last year. Can they go back to back? Navy, Vermont, Jackson State. Vermont's always in the mix. We got Grand Canyon always in the mix there. Illinois State as a 12 seed would be pretty cool out of the Missouri Valley, 100%. And then you got Troy, you got McNeese, both made the tournament last year. Idaho, Florida Gulf Coast. It's so early. It's really hard to say on these mid-majors, but UC Santa Barbara, again, always in the mix. Miami of Ohio was right there last year in the MAC, was unable to get it done, but I'm surprised. Akron's actually that's actually the biggest surprise here of the mid-major teams, I'd say, is not having Akron in, and honestly, probably not having them in as an 11 seed or a 12 seed, because they've returned pretty much everybody. Akron's going to be a scary team next year in the MAC, so look out. They were very good last year, and they returned. They were one of the few teams, especially in the mid-majors, that's very rare to return most of your team like that. So I think the Akron Zips are going to be slept on then for sure next year. I'm going to be a very dangerous team. Let me know what you guys think about Joe Lunardi's bracketology, guys. Do you guys agree with Joe on some of these things that I disagreed on him with, or are you guys taking my side? Some of my takes, sometimes I say some crazy things, but it is things that I truly believe, and we're way too early. It's fun to make some crazy takes here. Some of these teams I just can't believe he's so high on. Having teams like North Carolina, USC above Louisville. I mean, Arizona and Michigan as a 2, I guess. I don't see it. I think some of these teams deserve it more. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think. Subscribe if you guys are new. More college basketball content coming your way. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.